Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on my channel. It's Kevin, or Minis by Kev, whatever you want to call me, and in today's video we're going to be going back to working on the cardboard castle. It has been a while since I've even touched this project. I was having to save up egg cartons. I'm finally going to cut these up. We're finally going to start tiling the roof and maybe the back wall depending on if I have enough tiles. I also want to do the back of it because the back on the other side of the windows, because I made this the perfect size to fit into one of these cubes behind me, and you're going to see the back. However, I don't want to paint it yet because this is getting shut up against the wall for now, and I just don't want to get paint everywhere. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to get that far because I don't know if I have enough of this. We'll have to wait and see, and then we're gonna put it all together to see like how far I've come so far, and maybe at the end we'll wrap up and talk about all the things I have left to do because I know there's many things left to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and then we'll check in a bit. First and foremost, I started this video back in May, back when I was living in California. I now live in Rhode Island. I moved across the country, so this is a long time coming, this video, and you're gonna see because I've gotten a haircut, I have a different background. Life changes, you know? But I'm finally getting back to this because I feel like I'm really behind on the cardboard castle. There's not really a deadline for it, but I just feel behind for some reason. So to start off camera, I went ahead and cut all the egg cartons into their little squares. I kind of did a mismatch of sizes, which I regretted later when I had to do the back wall, but I cut them all and then I spread glue all over and I just started putting them down. And I'm going to speed through the painting and the dry brushing because I've done this before. If you see my other videos, I've done the walls as well as the stairs the same way, so you can watch those if you want a more in-depth. It's pretty simple though. I just painted and dry brushed because I'm doing the most simple dry brush. One color, base color, one color of dry brushing, because anything more and my mind starts to turn to mush and everything just turns into chaos. And apparently I don't know my own strength because at some point I broke the dry brush. It just completely cracked and fell apart. And this is what the dry brushing looks like when it's done. I'm really proud of it because if you've watched any of my old videos, you know that I don't always have the best experience with dry brushing, but I've decided if I just keep it simple, then it'll turn out okay, at least for me. So I went ahead and kept it simple, and then I decided it's time to work on this back wall, which had me very nervous because the cutouts are not as simple as just laying down in a straight line, but a little bit of chaos ensued. I apologize about the flickering lights you're going to see, but unfortunately because this was in a box, it was really difficult to get in there and not kind of catch the light, so I apologize about that. And honestly, reaching in here was just difficult in general. The way I did this back wall, it was not the best. I honestly, going back, maybe would have not attached the back wall until I'd already completed it, but at the time I was so excited to just have the box ready to go, so I put it all together, not thinking about what that would mean in the long term. So again, I think that maybe if I had the foresight to go back, I would maybe just not even add the back wall. Although I don't know how it would stay together as the box, but it might just fall flat. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done, but I probably would have rethought some things. But I went ahead and added the entire back wall, and I overlapped the windows a little bit, thinking that it would be easy to cut off the things that were overhanging, the little pieces that were overhanging, so that way it looked like it was flush cut. Turns out, looking back, this was also a bad idea, but in the moment, I thought it was a good idea. I thought it would be really easy to have the perfect shape if I just overlapped them and cut off the excess. I want to start by saying that if you're going to do something like this, be careful. Make sure you're always cutting away from yourself. I was not the most careful in this situation, but I tried using an X-Acto knife, I tried using scissors, I tried even using a box cutter off camera, and it was extremely difficult in these positions to get through these, but in the end, it just took a lot of just slowly cutting away and just chipping away at it. And eventually it was flush enough for me to be okay with how it looked. To really try and get it flat, I actually took this little tiny sander you can see at the bottom and I sanded it to try and get it as flat as possible, because you can sand it, but it's not going to be the best. It's not going to be completely flush. It's not going to be completely flat. It will fray a little bit, as you can see at the bottom of this, which is why I had to take out. Here you can see my little vacuum cleaner that I got that's supposed to be for like vacuuming your desk or something, but I use it for crafting all the time. I don't remember where I found this. I think maybe someone else had it on TikTok or something. And once everything was cleaned up and it was good to go, I just went ahead in with the same base coat gray that I use everywhere else and the same dry brush gray that I used everywhere else, so it would, you know, all go together. And it was at this point when I thought it started to look a little bit like Colleen Moore's Fairy Castle. If you've ever been to Chicago, it's at one of the museums there. It's really popular, and it just, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the brick coloring or just something about it. I was like, Colleen Moore's Fairy Castle, you know? And when I'm looking back at this while I'm recording the voiceover, it still reminds me of that. And I don't really know why, because hers is very fancy. There's like actual diamonds and mother of pearl, and this is just recyclable cardboard, like trash basically. But there was just something about it that really, to me, was like, it just had that same vibe to it. And that I love. That's what I was going for. I wanted to make something nice out of recycled material. And once I was done with the dry brushing, here it is. The lighting isn't perfect because I don't have studio lighting. I just have an OT light, which can wash things out. But this is what I look like. I wanted to show you when there's nothing else, the inside is officially done. The inside meaning the walls and the ceiling and the stairs and the floor. But the actual brick texture for the inside is done. I don't end up doing the other side of the windows because I didn't want it to get ruined. I didn't want to get paint everywhere. But this portion, the inside brick, is completely finished, and I'm just so happy. I'm happy with how it looks, and I love it. Which is when I decided to show you what it looks like with the tables in, which is when I started to second guess things. Is this too small? Is there not enough room for all 3 tables? So I tried to rearrange things. I tried to move some tables around, try and do a different configuration, but I knew that putting these in here with the benches may not work. So I was gonna have to figure something out in the long run. Okay, now that all of the walls are done, it's time to get started on the things that are going into it. So I have these tables, which I made in a previous video that you can go ahead and watch if you'd like. I'll go ahead and link it up and down, wherever. And they need benches. The only thing I'm worried about is that I think that maybe 3 tables may be too many. I think the benches, I wanted one on each side. And looking at a Playmobil figure, which I now can't find because it is 24th scale, standing next to these, it's gonna be really cramped. And I understand that it's supposed to be abandoned anyway, but like, will it be too cramped? I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably go ahead and make 2 benches per table and just see how it fits. And if I need to, I can remove stuff afterwards. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the benches, which if you didn't watch the previous video, these are made out of pasta boxes and Girl Scout cookie boxes, and my cat's behind me chewing on something. And so that's what I'm gonna do with this. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna turn these into benches for the tables. My original plan for this video was to only show the walls and the ceiling being done, but then I figured that's boring, so let's do a little bit more, which is why I decided to work on the benches that are going with the tables. Now, if you didn't watch my previous video, you should go back and watch it. It was really great, if I do say so myself. But what I do is I start off with these pasta boxes. Last time I also used Girl Scout cookie boxes, but this time it's not Girl Scout cookie season, so pasta it is. And what I do is I cut these down to a shape where they can all be glued together easily, which is just a rectangle. And I sand the cover a little bit just so the glue has something to stick to, but be careful because this does produce quite a bit of like blue dust, like painty blue dust. And I'm sure it's not healthy to breathe in, so just make sure you're wearing a mask. So I sand it, glue them together, and then sandwich them to make a thick enough that in 24th scale it will look like a board. Last time I used 4, this time I only used 3. I measure out the size that I want and I mark on the thick sandwich with pencil, and then I use this X-Acto knife to score over and over again because I don't want to cut myself, slip or anything, so I just keep going over and over again until it comes apart. After I'd cut them out, I held them up next to the table just so I could get an idea of what the benches would look like next to the table and not in the room box. I thought it looked fine, but soon the cracks started to show in the foundation that it was not going to be enough room. After I have the general shape of the bench, what I do is I measure out little planks, score it. I don't cut all the way through with the X-Acto knife, but I kind of score it to make it look like individual planks. And then I kind of just rough them up. I wanted it to look old and beaten up, and so I took the X-Acto knife to the sides, made it a little jagged, and just made it look weathered and older. I did a test run of what I wanted the benches to look like because I honestly didn't know if it was going to turn out well. So this one I made off camera, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like when I'm done because I really thought this was not going to work at first. Here's just another short clip showing you how I roughed up the boards to just be a little weathered. I just thought in case you weren't sure how to do it, you just kind of scrape at it. You kind of just take chunks out and scrape and keep going until you're good with how it looks. And after that, all I did was take a very small strip of paper and did like the band of iron, which I did on my tables as well. And then I used little diamond dot drills, which I learned from Bentley House Miniatures can look like rivets. And I wanted it to look like these were held together somehow. So I used those in the quote unquote steel section of the table to hold it all together. The legs of these benches were the hardest part to make, so what I did is I took a popsicle stick, I trimmed it down to about the size I wanted the bench to be height-wise, and then I split it in half and cut them at a diagonal. I know it's hard to see what I'm doing here, and I'm trying to explain it as best as possible, but I just kind of made them diagonal little legs and glued them together in the middle to make an X shape, so that way when I glued them to it, it would look like legs. And then I used a center support beam, which was another popsicle stick that was cut in half just to fit the 24th scale better. And I used a combination of hot glue and tacky glue to hold it together. because when I was working this tiny, I really needed it to just hold instantly. Next, I took the classic Blackmagic Craft mixture of black paint and Mod Podge, and I painted all over this because I knew from experience with the tables that I wanted a dark undertone, but that the mixture of the glue and paint would also really seal together the edges of the layers. Because it is multiple layers of pasta boxes, I kind of needed a seal on the corners to hold it all together, because sometimes my glue work, I tend to overglue, but it doesn't always stick. I don't know why. Sometimes it starts to separate, even though I'm a super overgluer. I started off by using the same dark brown paint that I used on the table, so that way they would kind of be cohesive and go together as if they were made for the same wood that was chopped down. And then after that, I did dry brushing. Now I did get a whole clip of me dry brushing this, but I realized very quickly you cannot see what I'm doing. I really do need to get an overhead shot, some kind of camera setup that you can see overhead, but to be honest, it's money and I don't have a lot of it because I just bought a house. So I'm trying to do my best with what I have. But what I did is I just took a cinnamon color and I dry brushed on top. It's not the exact same color that I dry brushed the tables with, but I think it ends up working out. It doesn't look bad together, and that's really what I'm going for. Here, I'm trying to show you the dry brushing color, but you can see where some of the planks kind of separated and popped up a little bit. But once they were dry, I kind of just pushed them back down and they kind of collapsed. And because it's supposed to be old and weathered anyway, I didn't really care that it looked kind of old and weathered. After that came the very tedious task of trying to paint on the silvery gray color to the band of metal that's holding the benches together. And this was very tedious because you don't want to get any on the brown, but it's very difficult because the bands are very tiny. But as tedious as it was in the end, I think it was really worth it. It was worth going slow and making sure that I did it very carefully because I really like how they turned out. And I think that next to the table, they look good. At first looked a little short, but then I put a Playmobil figure next to them because Playmobil figures are 24th scale and it actually fits with a Playmobil chair. However, when all was said and done is really when I wanted to show you what the room looked like with everything in it. However, when I started to put it in there, I started to panic a little bit because this is when I started to notice that it was going to be very cramped. And when I went back and looked at my original plans, it's actually because I made the tables slightly too big. They were supposed to be about a half an inch shorter each one. So I think if they were the right size, they would have fit. So I thought maybe let's try this configuration with them next to each other and let me try staggering them and let me do this and let me do that. And in the end, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I thought maybe if I put something that was 24th scale, aka the Playmobil figure in, that I could see like, look, oh, he can scooch around these tables. It's just kind of a tight fit. So maybe this is just a really tight castle. Maybe they didn't have a lot of room. But then the more I thought about it, I realized that when it's this crowded, it makes the room seem smaller for some reason. It doesn't feel as grand. I wanted it to feel like this big, tall castle room, and it felt just like a mess hall or something. I wanted it to be like the throne room, where maybe they just threw up some tables for a feast, but it wasn't feeling like that, so I knew I had to change something. I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm going to do this configuration because I felt like it's kind of draws your line of sight to the back, as well as gives me some framing points for the tapestries I'd like to put in, as well as a rug that will go underneath the two tables. And I'm hoping that this will frame it all together and be a nice line of sight to the back and to the walls and just kind of frame it all together. First off, let me just say, I'm really still trying to figure out the lighting in this office. It's a little all over the place, but I'll get it figured out eventually. But that's it for this week's video. As you can see here, I put everything together. I'm like 99% sure this is the kind of configuration I'm gonna go with the tables, where I'm gonna do kind of like in a row, just because there's just not enough room for the third one. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this third table now. Maybe I can make a different diorama out of it, but I think that this kind of just fits it better. I think that, like I said in the voiceover, it kind of just, I feel like it has a good line of sight because I'm gonna have stained glass windows back there, and I'm gonna have the tapestries on the walls, on the sides, and I'm thinking about doing a rug down the middle, and then the throne right at the top. And I just think that this will draw your eye directly to the back of it. But if you have a better idea or you have any suggestions, please comment below, let me know. I'm always open to taking them because I'm not 100%. Like I said, I'm only 99%. So there's a 1% chance that your comment could sway my mind. That is it for this week. We got lots done, and I have videos planned for the rest of the year. You're gonna get one every other week, except for in October, you're gonna get one every week for spooky season. So if you like me or you like miniatures, make sure you hit that subscribe button below, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!